If you could sweep back Batman's cape, you might just find, on his utility belt, his sidearm. And it just might be the HK45. So here it is, the Heckler Koch HK45. Alright, so first let's take a look at some of the paraphernalia that comes in the box. And when you open this, or when I first opened it, this is not my very first time opening the box, of course. That's pretty much how it happened. All the stuff in the lid just fell. So we have a nice sticker that will certainly find a good home. We have our manual, of course. We have, of course, our pistol lock with HK's logo on it. We'll add that to the collection of pistol locks. We have a bag of assorted paraphernalia, which includes, I believe, a spent shell, although I haven't opened it, but that feels longer than a spent shell. Maybe it's 2. So it might have a couple of shell casings in there from test firing. We have our alternate backstrap. This should be the large backstrap. I believe the smaller size is the one that's installed on the pistol in the factory. We have some spare O-rings. Looks like maybe 4 spare O-rings. Those are for the barrel. The barrel has an O-ring in it. We'll take a look at that or talk about that. And we have a small tool that looks like a key, and it actually kind of is a key, and that is for the pistol's lockout system. So that's what's included in this little bag. And then of course we have our top egg crate foam, and when we move that out of the way, we have one beautiful pistol. So this is my very first Heckler & Koch product. The HK45 to me was kind of a no-brainer. I mean, this is, if you're going to start anywhere, this is a great place to start. This gun, the HK45, was initially designed as in response to a request by the U.S. military for a possible replacement of the Beretta M9 pistol as the issue sidearm for the military. That is, of course, a 9mm. The military was interested in looking at going back to .45 caliber. The trials were eventually scrubbed, citing, too high a cost to do the replacement as the reason. So we'll never know how this pistol might have fared in that competition. But luckily for us, H&K decided to make this a commercial offering. It's very much a duty gun. There are a number of military units that use this gun, some very elite. There are a number of law enforcement and police departments all over the world that use this gun as their duty gun, and it is available commercially here in the United States and elsewhere. So we're very thankful for that, or at least I am. So in the box, other than the pistol, you have the magazine that is in the pistol, and you have an additional magazine, so a total of 2. I will not use the word spare. I have never seen what I call a spare magazine. But we get 2 magazines with the pistol. They are both 10-round magazines. The pistol's capacity is 10+1. These magazines, don't ever drop one of these things anywhere that you can't retrieve it, because these are just about the most expensive handgun magazine I've ever seen. So let's talk about some of the key specs of this gun. I'm going to set this magazine over there. This is a full-size gun. It's definitely a full-size handgun. It weighs in at about 31.2 ounces. That's the published weight with an empty magazine. So just over 31 ounces. It's not that terribly heavy. Like most polymer frame pistols, obviously you're saving a considerable amount of weight by having a polymer frame. It is just about 8 inches long, end to end, and 5.9 inches high, so almost 6 inches high. This is a tall handgun. So from the bottom of our magazine to the top of our rear sight is quite a distance. Again, just about 6 inches. It's 1.5 inches thick, actually just a little more than 1.5 inches thick, and at the widest place, and that's going to be right here where the safety is. So from this safety over to probably the slide stop lever on the opposite side, if you measure that distance, That's just over 1.5 inches. The sight radius on this pistol is 6.63 inches, so over 6.5 inch sight radius, which is very respectable. The barrel is just under 4.5 inches at 4.46. It is a cold steel hammer forged barrel. It is also polygonal rifling. That, by the way, was an H&K innovation. And again, as I mentioned, we have a 10-round magazine. That is the only capacity available for this handgun. There is no extended magazine that I'm aware of that's available. This is a hammer-fired pistol. It is a double action, single action design. It does have a safety. The safety is very much, for you 1911 guys, the safety is extremely traditional in that respect. It behaves very much like a 1911 safety. Up is safe, down is fire, and the lever is in the same spot that you're used to, and it even has a very similar feel. Okay, now one difference, if we go from safe to fire and then we go down one more, it's also a decocker, so it will safely drop the hammer even with a live round in the chamber. So some of the features, just general features of this gun, I talked about the polymer frame, so it is a polymer framed handgun. It has a 1913 Picatinny style rail in the front, and it's actually a very good length. I haven't put a ruler on that yet, but that's close to a couple inches of good usable rail out front. So if you need to mount a light or something else on the front, plenty of room for that. The gun has an ambidextrous slide stop lever, so you can release the slide right hand or left hand just as easily. It's a nice extended slide stop, so it comes back within easy reach of your thumb without having to readjust your grip. That's a big plus. It has the ambidextrous European style magazine release. That may be something not everybody's a fan of. It's something that I'm going to have to adjust myself to a little bit. But the European style is this paddle built into either side of the trigger guard. And again, obviously ambidextrous, and that's your magazine release. Now from a functioning perspective, it's an extremely good magazine release. Very, very positive ejection at any angle. The gun comes with a Novak style sight system. It's a low profile, sloped front, very low sitting set of sights. It's a 3-dot combat style. Looks like a pretty good sight picture. The rear notch is not too terribly wide, so you don't have a great deal of airspace between the front post and the rear notch, although there's some. It is a 3-dot combat design. You see the yellow color there. These will glow in the dark. They'll glow quite brightly in the dark. However, they're not night sights the way we refer to that terminology now, because they don't contain any tritium. They don't have any self-glowing property. They do have to be charged with ambient light, whether it's artificial or natural. Talked about the optional replacement backstrap. So again, there is a larger size backstrap that can be replaced if you are so inclined. There is a loaded chamber indicator built into the extractor. It has an external extractor, and there's some red paint that you may just be able to make out right here. So let me demonstrate that loaded chamber indicator. I'll put a artificial round, this is a snap cap dummy round, into a magazine, put the magazine in the pistol, and charge it. And now you can see from looking down from the shooter's perspective, you can see that red paint at the front end of that extractor. So that's your indication that you have a round in the chamber. There's a little bit of a tactile feel. You can feel that, but it's not super. Pistol also has front cocking serrations. Has a really nice grippy cocking serrations on the rear. Same type of grip on the front. They're a little smaller. They're about half the height, but if you like to do a press check, you've got a good front serration to grab. The grip has a very aggressive design. It has a very aggressive look. You know, you see obviously the Batman reference there. A lot of people, I'm not the first one to come up with that, so I'm taking no credit for making that comparison, but you can certainly see why some people call that the Batman style grip. Definitely has that wing, that bat wing look right here. But aside from aesthetically being interesting, it also is ergonomically very good. It's got a nice swell right here in the lower part that grabs into your palm really well. The finger grooves are really good on this pistol. I'm not always a big fan of finger grooves because if they don't happen to fit where my fingers fall, then they're actually worse than not having them at all. But these are really good. There's a decent amount of undercut on the trigger guard, but really makes that work is that finger groove right under it. So you get that finger right up in there. The texture is very aggressive. It's sort of a tiny repeated half moon pattern, but it makes for a nice grip surface. So I'm going to have to see after some shooting whether or not I need to put a Talon grip on this thing or not. This may be one gun that really doesn't have to have it. Because we don't have a double stack magazine, it also keeps the grip thin. My initial feel of the grip is that it feels very much like the Smith & Wesson M&P 45 in thickness. Now the distance from here to here is much shorter than the M&P. M&P is much thicker in that regard. But as far as the thickness right here, that's what it reminds me of. It reminds me of the M&P. It's about that same thickness. So initial comments without having shot the gun yet, the ergonomics feel really good. I can't wait to get this thing out to the range and shoot it because I really can't wait to feel how this feels shooting it. The ergonomics feel very much like my PPQ, and if you watch my videos at all, you know how in love I am with the PPQ. So this has got a very similar feel in terms of the overall ergonomics. So I'm really anxious to get out there and check it out. Walther does not make a 45 caliber, so this is as close. If you're a PPQ fan, this is as close as you're going to get right now in a 45. The gun does have a relatively high bore axis. If you look at where the web of my hand is, and then look at where that hammer is, and I can even cock the hammer, you can see the firing pin in there. Look how high that firing pin is to the web of my hand. But that is not uncommon for a hammer-fired gun. 6 hours are just as high. My Walther PPX, which is a hammer-fired pistol, is just as high. Berettas are high. So any hammer-fired pistol typically is going to have a high bore axis. Again, I haven't had the pleasure yet of firing this gun, so I'm not going to offer an opinion about what difference that does or does not make in terms of recoil, felt recoil. The aesthetics of this gun are fantastic. You know, I love, that's very subjective, of course, but I love the look of this pistol. I think the design is exquisite. You know, from the angled front to the serrations that they've put in the front and rear for cocking. They're very thin. They're nicely spaced. They're relatively unobtrusive, but they add a nice look. You know, the cut-in groove along the slide, the flat top, you know, the anti-glare flat top on the slide. So many detailed elements. Another thing I found too, and you can see this is pretty much, other than me having wiped off the outside at one point just because it was so wet, this gun was shipped really wet. You can see all the oil in there. You can see all the oil on the barrel, which is really nice because I'm noticing a lot of manufacturers are starting to ship their guns like dry as a bone. So it was kind of refreshing to see that this was packaged for storage. And oddly enough, or interestingly enough too, it was not just oil, but there's a decent amount of grease in this gun as well. So the rails, the almost the entire inside of the slide is well coated, very well lubricated. I always field strip a gun, clean it, and lubricate it myself before I go shoot it anyway. But this is one you could, I mean, you know, from the looks of it, you just pretty much take this box right out to the range, open it, and shoot it. So there's the unboxing. I can't wait to get this thing out and shoot it. I will definitely bring you along for the ride. And then once I get to shoot this thing, then we'll definitely have more to talk about.